Would you pray with me, please? Oh God, we want to be like the writer of the 23rd Psalms. We want our cup to runneth over. Fill us with your love. Fill us with your word. Fill us with your Holy Spirit. And may it all be for your glory. May their hearts and my mind both be controlled by you and transform us into your children this day and forever. Through Jesus, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Well, can you believe that we've already had 5 Sundays and today's the last day of the first month of the year? Is it just me or is this going way too fast again? We're going to take a Sunday off and then we're going to launch right into Lent. All my toys will be going to the office. This week. Last week, though, we showed you a video which insinuated to you that Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, and Anakin Skywalker, who I gave you the spoiler alert was actually the father of Luke Skywalker, were in heaven. And my question for you this week is, how in the heck can that happen? If anybody deserved a straightforward, one-way ticket to hell, to live the rest of their existence for all of eternity, gnashing of their teeth and being laughed at by the fire, it was Darth Vader, was it not? I mean, he didn't dress in black because he wanted to be Johnny Cash. He dressed in black to send us the message that he was nothing but pure evil. The only one more evil than him was the emperor, and he couldn't have that job because it was already taken, so he became the emperor's right-hand man, his henchman, his hitman. He took great joy in destroying entire planets. You saw, I think, the very first clip we showed you was him being mean and choking somebody out from across the room. If you could have seen behind his mask, he'd have been smiling. He's not a nice person. I mean, if you watch the movies, and one of them, I think it's the first one, where he tells Luke that he's his father. Am I right? Was that in the movie last night, Ryan? Oh, or is it the second one that he tells Luke he's his father? Second. After he says, Luke, I'm your father, he turns around and cuts Luke's hand off. He's not going to get Father of the Year award. So how in the heck did he get there? How could he live his entire life in evil mode and then end up walking through the valley we talked about last week and coming out in the light? It doesn't compute, does it? It makes no sense. Because it would have us believe that based on what you saw today, based on one act of kindness, based on the fact that 5 minutes before he died, he actually turned around and did something good, that he made it to heaven at the end of the film. Anybody else have trouble with that? Anybody else think maybe that can't be right? That he does not deserve to be in heaven? We know people that deserve to be in heaven, don't we? I mean, we know people that were raised in the church or went to Sunday school. They never missed a Sunday. It doesn't matter whether Ohio State was playing or there was a blizzard. They were in church every Sunday. They taught Sunday school class. They read their Bible. Their knees are raw from all the time they spent on it praying. They served on every committee of the church. They were even able to work with the women in the kitchen and get along with them. See, I didn't even have to locate Dixie today. Now I know exactly where she's at. I mean, never said a bad word about anybody. This person would have been the kind of people that the rest of us are told that we should model our lives on. here and they're a saint there. But how does Darth Vader representation, and he just represents society, how did he make it? I mean, that's the same thing as me standing here today and telling you that child molesters can get to heaven, that murderers can get to heaven, that thieves and robbers can get to heaven, that you can be as promiscuous as you want and get to heaven, that you can live an alternate lifestyle and get to heaven. We don't want to listen to that, do we? It doesn't fit in our mind. We don't want to believe it. We don't want to accept it. And yet, whether it's fair or not, Jesus Christ himself said that can happen. I'm going to share with you the parable of the vineyard worker, which to me is probably the hardest lesson that Jesus gave us. I don't even like it. Except that I realize we need it. Listen again to these words. They're not mine. They were taught to us by Jesus Christ himself. And where he's teaching that, yeah, even the Darth Vaders of the world can make it to heaven. And again, it's probably the most despised parable that we deal with. In the 20th chapter of Matthew, we read these words. For the kingdom of heaven is like the landowner who went out early one morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay the normal daily wage and sent them out to work. At 9 o'clock in the morning, he was passing through the marketplace and saw some people standing around doing nothing. So he hired them, telling them he would pay them whatever was right at the end of the day. So they went to work in the vineyard too. At noon and again at 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. At 5 o'clock that afternoon, he was in town again and saw some more people standing around. He asked them, "Why haven't you been working today?" They replied, "Because no one hired us." The landowner told them, "Then go out and join the others in my vineyard." That evening, he told the foreman to call the workers in and pay them, beginning with the last workers first. When those hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each received a full day's wage. When those hired first came to get their pay, they assumed they would receive more, but they too were paid a day's wage. When they received their pay, they protested to the owner. "Those people worked only 1 hour, and yet you paid them just as much as you paid us, who worked all day in the scorching heat." He answered one of them, "Friend, I haven't been unfair. Didn't you agree to work all day for the usual wage? Take your money and go. I wanted to pay this last worker the same as you. Is it against the law for me to do what I want with my money? So should you be jealous because I am kind to others?" So those who are last now will be first then, and those who are first will be last. Let's put this in a form that we can understand it today. The owner of the factory out here at Crossroads Industrial Park got an order for more widgets than his meager force could make. So he drove down to the town square where all the people that needed jobs were gathering and holding their signs, "No work for food." 6 in the morning, he hired them and took them out and put them to work making widgets. Said, "You'll just work from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. I'll even give you a time off for a couple breaks and you can have dinner. Because I'm a fair kind of boss. And I will give you, even though you've never worked for me before, even though that I've never done a background check or any of the other things, I will pay you what one of my normal workers makes for the day." 9 o'clock in the morning, he came back into town, probably to pick up donuts at Glory's whatever. And he saw more people in the store. He stopped back there. "What are you doing?" And he put them to work and said, "I'll pay you a fair wage." So I'm guessing they would have thought, "Well, he'll prorate whatever hours are left. We'll be okay." At noon and 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. He's going to get these widgets made and make this order work no matter what he has to do. At 5 o'clock, o'clock, when there's only 1 hour left in the day, he found more people that needed to work. And he hired them. I'd like to think that he got all the widgets done. I don't know. But then he tells the foreman, he says, call them all in and pay. Start with the one I hired at 5 and work backwards. So he called the ones in that had only worked an hour and gave them a full day's wage. He did the same thing with those that were hired at 3 o'clock, and those that were hired at noon, and those that were hired at 9. Now, the ones that were hired at 6 are sitting in the background going, all right, if he's doing that to them, we're going to get a heck of a bonus. Because we've been here all day. And the foreman called them in, and guess what? Gave them the same pay. Now, you all have been working long enough to know what would have happened. The phone lines to the union steward would have been lit up. Grievances would have been flying. Jimmy Hoffa would have been turning over in his grave if somebody could tell you where it was. They would be cranked up, they would be mad, and they would be shouting unfair all over the plant. So they form their committee and they go to the boss and go, hey, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't right. And the boss looks at him and goes, did I promise you that I'd pay a whole day's wage? Yeah. Did I pay you a penny less or a penny more? No. Did I do exactly what I said I would do? Yeah. Then I kept my end of the bargain. Well, yeah, but wait a minute. Some of them only worked an hour. They didn't get near as much grease on them at the machines as we got. He said, it's my money. My factory. I'm thinking I can do whatever I want. As a matter of fact, he says, I can't believe that you'd be mad at me because I was actually generous to people and trying to help them. Now, we can sit in church and say, oh, yeah. But you and I all know that most of us would be on the picket line that night telling everybody about how unfair this boss was. Because that's the way we're kind of raised, isn't it? We're raised with that, a fair day's work for a fair day's wage. I think John Wayne made that one famous, I'm not sure. We believe and we're told in grade school that as soon as the Pilgrims got off the boat, they said, no work, no eat. And then we quote that Bible scripture that everybody knows so well. For God helps those who help themselves. Problem is, that's not in the Bible. You won't find that anywhere in the Bible. You read any tradition or any translation you want, it's not in there. Matter of fact, if I read this right, it says just the opposite. That God helps to help us. But that's our mentality, is it not? We don't like it to read stories like that. It doesn't compute well with us. And sooner or later, as we have to look at that story and we have to think about it and we have to wrap our head around this, is the fact that when you're working with God, it has absolutely nothing to do with deserving or earning. It's got to do with grace. It's got to do with grace. You cannot work hard enough or long enough to get to heaven. You cannot be good enough to deserve to make the trip. If it wasn't for God's grace, none of us would have any hope, would we? But yet in our minds we want to do that like, well, yeah, I've been a Christian for 20 years. How did the guy that just found it 5 minutes ago get in? Let me share a story with you. True story. I'm not putting hair on the dog, or I didn't get this out of a book. This is a life experience. When I was an officer, the last 2 years I was chief here, I was pastoring Leesville and North Robinson United Methodist churches. And one of the members of my congregation came to me and told me that his dad was probably not going to be around long, had never been in church, had no idea who Jesus was, and would I please go see him? I got to share with you, I knew this man from my other job. This man was well known in town. Now, this man could be found at one of the service clubs most of the time with a beer in his hand. This man had caused and generated numerous reports at the police department. This man had lived a hard life and was now paying for it in his old age because when you're diabetic, I don't think you're supposed to drink that much, and he had lost both of his legs. But I went. And I talked to him. I bet I was there a couple times a week for 3 weeks, and at the end of the third week, he said, I want to know Jesus. And we prayed right there in his bed. And he accepted Jesus Christ, and I baptized him. I don't know who changed the sheets when I was done, but I baptized him right in that bed. And he wanted to know more, so I went out and bought him a Bible. A week later, I'm driving through town, and there's ambulances and one of my cruisers and a fire truck at his house. It was right there on Walnut Street. And I stopped. He had died. And his family found him that morning. And clutched in his chest was that Bible. I preached his funeral, and I proclaimed that I knew exactly he was in heaven. Hadn't been good until the last couple of weeks of his life, but I knew that he was in heaven. And we struggle with that. We don't want to accept that. We would have rather remembered all of his past. But let me ask you this. If that was your mom or dad, would you feel the same way? If that was your spouse, would you want them to hear the story even if it was at the last minute? If that was one of your children or grandchildren, does it really matter when they found Jesus or just that they found him? Yeah, it got kind of quiet, didn't it? Don't you just love it when I turn it on you? But isn't that true? It doesn't matter in God's eyes when you get it as long as you get it. Now, let me put a caveat with that. I don't think that you can hear the gospel, know what you're supposed to do, and then sit on it for 20 years, waiting till the last minute. For a couple of reasons. Number one, you don't know when the last minute is. Number two, I'm guessing God doesn't appreciate it when you use the cross as a get out of hell free card. And you've been playing all the time before when you do what you were supposed to do. For those that had never heard, for those that had never been ministered to, for those who had no hope until that last moment, God will take them in. But listen to this. If I believe that, then don't I also have to believe that you can do absolutely nothing so bad that God's grace won't cover it? So I want to tell you this one. I don't know what sin you're holding on to that you think I can't be forgiven for. God's grace is a lot bigger than you. Matter of fact, the Bible, people want to quote you on, well, there's one unforgivable sin. Yeah, show it to me. Blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. The denial that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. Isn't that what Paul did? Did God forgive him and put him to work writing most of your New Testament? That's only unforgivable if you die with that belief. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that you could ever do that God can't cover with grace. So quit worrying about it. Just turn it over to Jesus. And let him worry about it. Let him cover it. I liked the end of that film, but matter of fact, until I watched it this week, I didn't realize that Tabitha even got it in there. But as he takes the mask off, he tells his dad, that's Luke, and that was his dad, Darth Vader. He said, now I'm not going to leave you here. I'm going to save you. And Darth looked at him and said, you already have. Picture this. When you finally come to your senses, when somebody finally gets it, and they look at Jesus and say, save me, He says, I already have. You just needed to realize it. The work's already done. All you have to do is accept it. Amen. Amen.